Xylocaine gasped, inhaling the sharp, stinging fumes of ionized particles. Consciousness flickered, threatening to abandon him. His chest, bare and slick with a mixture of crimson fluid and perspiration, was pressed against the freezing, twisted plasteel of a ruined barricade. The fragmented remnants of his reactive camouflage suit, still attached to his legs, sparked erratically, a painful memento of the near-lethal blast that had almost taken his life. Through the blur of agony and the roaring symphony of combat, he glimpsed an astonishing sight. A colossal figure moved with an almost ethereal fluidity through the carnage. Her skin, the color of deep amethyst, radiated a faint luminescence against the charcoal-gray sky. She was one of the Luminians, the towering near-human race that had become humanity's most formidable allies in this relentless war against the cybernetic legions of the Zenith Concord. The Luminian warrior's hair, the shade of a twilight nebula, streamed behind her like a battle standard as she cut a devastating swathe through the enemy ranks. Her eyes, like polished silver, shone with unwavering resolve as they scanned the battlefield. Then, they fixed on his position. In that instant, Xylo felt a peculiar shift in the fabric of reality, an inexplicable connection. "Hold on, little warrior," her voice reached him, somehow both a resonant boom and a soothing murmur. Before he could fully comprehend what was happening, she had gathered him into her arms as effortlessly as if he were an infant. Her armor, a masterpiece blending practicality and elegance, felt cool against his feverish skin. "I'm fine," he managed to growl, his stubborn pride warring with his debilitating injuries. "Put me down. I can still fight." She actually chuckled, a sound reminiscent of crystalline chimes in a summer breeze. "You humans are all the same. Always ready to fight, even when you can barely stand." Her name was Lyra, he would later discover, and she was about to irrevocably alter the course of his life. The world became a dizzying vortex as Lyra carried Xylo across the battlefield. Her long strides covered distances that would have taken him agonizing minutes to traverse. Despite her imposing height of nearly 4 meters, her movements were graceful and precise, effortlessly avoiding incoming fire while keeping him secure against her armored chest. "Damn it," Xylo cursed as a searing jolt of pain ripped through his side. "I had them, right where I wanted them." "Of course you did," Lyra responded, a hint of gentle amusement in her melodious voice. "Just like you had them when that plasma burst nearly disintegrated you." Xylo attempted to formulate a witty retort, but found himself captivated by the way her silver eyes seemed to shimmer with a mixture of concern and playful teasing. His long, dark auburn hair, matted with perspiration and blood, fell across his face as he struggled to maintain some semblance of dignity while being carried like a helpless child. They arrived at the field infirmary, a cluster of advanced modular units positioned behind the primary defensive line. The other Luminians moved with purposeful efficiency around the encampment, their amethyst skin creating an otherworldly ambience in the fading light. Some offered Lyra respectful nods, while others cast curious glances at the human cradled in her arms. "Vanguard Captain Valerius isn't going to like this," Xylo muttered, referring to his superior officer. "I was supposed to hold that position." "Your Vanguard Captain will like you being dead even less," Lyra countered, ducking into one of the larger medical tents. "Besides, I outrank him in this sector." The interior of the tent was a fascinating juxtaposition of human and Luminian medical technology. Lyra carefully placed Xylo on a cot designed for humans, though it appeared comically small in comparison to her towering stature. "Stay," she commanded, pointing a long, elegant finger at him. "I mean it, Xylocaine. Try to leave this cot, and I'll bind you to it." Despite his pain, Xylo couldn't suppress a grin, his thick, neatly trimmed beard failing to conceal his amusement. "Is that a threat or a promise?" Lyra's eyes widened slightly, before she released another of those musical laughs. "You humans and your constant flirtation. Even half dead, you can't help yourselves, can you?" "It's part of our charm," Xylo replied, wincing as he attempted to find a less painful position. "Along with our stubborn refusal to die when we're supposed to." "That's what makes you such fascinating allies," Lyra said, beginning to gather medical supplies that looked miniature in her large hands. "Other species see your size and assume you're fragile. They never expect the fire within." She began cleaning his wounds with surprising gentleness, her massive hands displaying remarkable dexterity as she worked. Xylo found himself studying her features, the subtle, intricate patterns in her amethyst skin, the way her twilight nebula hair seemed to capture and refract light, the determined set of her jaw as she focused on her task. You're staring, she noted, without looking up from her work. Just trying to figure out why a high-ranking Lemnian warrior is playing medic to a human grunt, Xylo replied, attempting to ignore the strangely pleasant sensation of her fingers against his skin. Perhaps I have my reasons, she said mysteriously, applying a healing compound to his most severe injury. Now be quiet and let me work, unless you'd prefer I get one of the human medics. Xylo shook his head, instantly regretting the movement as pain lanced through his neck. No, I'm good here. Though I have to admit, this isn't how I imagined my day going when I woke up this morning. Life rarely goes as planned in wartime, Lyra said softly, her silver eyes meeting his dark brown ones. Sometimes, that's for the better. The medical tent became Xylo's world for the next several days. Despite his protests, Lyra insisted on personally overseeing his recovery, her dedication extending far beyond what might be expected from a high-ranking Lemnian warrior. Her gentle ministrations and constant presence created an intimate atmosphere that grew more charged with each passing hour. You need to eat, Lyra declared on the third morning, carrying a bowl that looked comically small in her massive hands. Human bodies require regular sustenance to heal properly. Xylo, still weak but improving, tried to sit up straighter. I can feed myself, you know. I'm not completely helpless. Of course you're not, she replied with that musical laugh that was becoming increasingly familiar. But why should you when I'm here? Her silver eyes sparkled with mischief as she perched carefully on the edge of his cot, which creaked under her weight despite her careful movements. Because it's embarrassing, Xylo suggested, though he couldn't help but smile at her determined expression. What would your warriors think if they saw their commander spoon-feeding a human? They would think I am ensuring the recovery of a valuable ally, she countered, filling the spoon with what appeared to be some kind of nutrient-rich broth. Now, open up. Xylo complied, partly because he was genuinely hungry and partly because he found himself increasingly unable to deny her anything. The broth was surprisingly palatable, with an exotic flavor he couldn't quite place. This is actually decent, he admitted between spoonfuls. Better than standard military rations, anyway. I had it specially prepared, Lyra said, her amethyst skin seeming to glow slightly brighter. We Lemnians understand the importance of proper nutrition during recovery. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the distant rumble of explosions. Both warriors tensed, years of combat experience taking over. Lyra's free hand instinctively moved to the energy weapon at her hip. Status report, she called out, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. A younger Lemnian warrior rushed into the tent, his armor bearing fresh scorch marks. Commander, the Zenith forces have launched a surprise attack on the eastern perimeter. They've breached the first line of defense. Lyra's expression hardened, but her hand remained gentle as she set aside the bowl. Coordinate with the human forces. I want a full defensive line established within 5 minutes. She turned to Xylo, conflict evident in her silver eyes. I need to handle this. Go, Xylo said firmly, already trying to swing his legs over the side of the cot. I can help. You will do no such thing, she replied, easily pushing him back with one finger. You're not healed enough for combat. Her expression softened slightly. Please, Xylo. Stay here, for me. The way she said his name sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. Before he could respond, she was gone, her powerful stride carrying her swiftly out of the tent. Xylo could hear her shouting orders, organizing the defense of the camp. The sounds of battle grew closer. Xylo forced himself to remain in bed, though every instinct screamed at him to join the fight. Through the tent flap, he caught glimpses of Lemnian warriors moving into position, their massive forms casting long shadows in the morning light. Suddenly, the tent flap burst open again. Lyra rushed back in, her armor now bearing fresh battle damage. We need to move you. The eastern section isn't secure. Without waiting for his response, she scooped him up in her arms once more. This time, Xylo didn't protest. He was acutely aware of how her armor pressed against his bare skin, of the strength in her arms as she held him close. I can walk, he offered weakly, more out of pride than actual ability. Hush, she commanded, but there was warmth in her tone. Let me protect you, stubborn human. They moved through the camp at a rapid pace, Lyra's long strides eating up the distance. Around them, the battle raged, but her focus remained entirely on keeping Xylo safe. She ducked into a more fortified bunker, one clearly designed for Laminian use. This is your personal quarters, Xylo realized as she gently laid him on a massive bed that could have comfortably held 5 humans. It is, she admitted, checking his bandages to ensure their hasty move hadn't reopened any wounds. You'll be safer here. Their faces were close now, her silver eyes meeting his brown ones. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Xylo reached up, his hand looking small as he touched her amethyst cheek. Why are you really doing all this, Lyra? He asked softly. Why me? She leaned into his touch, her Twilight Nebula hair falling forward to create a curtain around them. Because from the moment I saw you, fighting against impossible odds, refusing to yield even when badly wounded, I knew you were different. You humans fascinate us, but you... She paused, searching for the right words. You call to something in me I didn't know existed. The sounds of battle seemed to fade away as they gazed at each other. Xylo's heart raced as Lyra slowly lowered her face toward his. The size difference should have made it awkward, but somehow, it felt perfectly natural. When their lips met, the kiss was gentle at first, both of them aware of their physical differences. But it quickly deepened into something more passionate. Lyra's skin seemed to glow brighter, and Xylo could feel a subtle vibration, almost like a purr, emanating from her chest. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. That was... Xylo started. Unexpected. Lyra suggested, a smile playing at her lips. I was going to say amazing, he replied, running his fingers through her silky hair. Though we might need to work on the logistics. Her musical laugh filled the room. Always the tactical thinker, aren't you? Her expression grew more serious. This isn't exactly conventional. Nothing about either of us has ever been conventional, Xylo pointed out, pulling her down for another kiss. And I've never cared much for rules that don't make sense. Their moment was interrupted by another explosion, this one closer than the others. Lyra straightened, her warrior instincts taking over. I need to end this attack quickly, she said, her voice filled with determination. And something else. Possession, perhaps? Stay here. I'll return as soon as I can. Be careful, Xylo called after her as she strode toward the door. She paused, looking back with a smile that made his heart skip a beat. Always. I have something worth coming back for now. The days following the attack brought a welcome period of calm. As Xylo's strength returned, Lyra insisted he remain in her quarters, claiming it was for his protection. They both knew it was more than that. The massive space became their private sanctuary, where rank and species ceased to matter. Tell me about your world, Lyra requested one evening, reclining on her bed while Xylo sat cross-legged beside her. Her armor was replaced by flowing robes that emphasized her elegant form, the fabric shimmering with subtle patterns that seemed to match her glowing skin. Terra prime. Xylo ran a hand through his dark beard thoughtfully. It's beautiful, but complicated. We're still learning to appreciate what we have. Like what? She reached out, trailing a finger along his arm with surprising delicacy. The oceans, for one. Miles of azure water stretching to the horizon. Mountains that pierce the clouds. Forests so dense you can't see the sky through the canopy. He caught her hand in his, marveling at the size difference. What about your home world? Lyra's silver eyes softened with memory. Etheria Prime is magnificent. Our cities are built into crystalline mountains that catch the light of 3 suns. The buildings rise kilometers into the sky, and the atmospheric bridges between them look like strands of starlight. Sounds incredible, Xylo murmured, distracted by the way her skin seemed to pulse with a subtle glow when he traced patterns on her palm. That tickles, she laughed, her Twilight Nebula hair cascading around them as she leaned closer. Your touch is so different from anything I've known. So intense. Good intense? He asked, his voice growing husky. Very good, she purred, the sound reverberating through her chest. Humans are fascinating creatures. So small yet so. She paused, searching for the right word. Passionate. Xylo grinned. We're full of surprises. To demonstrate, he pulled her down for a kiss that left them both breathless. When they parted, Lyra's skin was glowing noticeably brighter. You certainly are, she agreed, her silver eyes darkening with desire. In my culture, Such intensity is uncommon. We tend to be more reserved, more controlled. And now? Xylo asked, running his fingers through her silky hair. Now, I understand why humans have such a reputation for breaking down barriers, she replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. You make me want to be less controlled. Their next kiss was anything but controlled. The size difference that should have been awkward somehow made everything more exciting, more intense. Lyra's natural glow brightened until she seemed to illuminate the entire room. I should warn you, she breathed between kisses. When my people become intimate, our bioluminescence becomes quite dramatic. Xylo laughed softly. I think I can handle a light show. There's more, she continued, her hands gentle as they explored his much smaller form. We form deep psychic bonds during moments of connection. It's not permanent, but it's intense. Are you sure you want? He silenced her with another kiss. I want everything you're willing to share. What followed was beyond anything either of them had experienced before. Their physical union was just the beginning. Lyra's psychic abilities opened a connection between them that transcended mere physical pleasure. They shared not just sensation, but emotion, memory, essence. Xylo experienced fragments of Lyra's life, her first battle victory, the weight of command, the loneliness of being different, even among her own kind. She, in turn, felt his determination, his fierce loyalty, his growing feelings for her that went far beyond physical attraction. Hours later, they lay entwined, Lyra's natural glow creating shifting patterns on the ceiling. Her massive form curled protectively around Xylo's smaller frame, one hand absently stroking his hair. That was. Xylo started. Unprecedented. Lyra suggested, amusement coloring her tone. I was going to say mind-blowing, but that works too. He propped himself up on an elbow to look at her. I've never experienced anything like that psychic connection. She smiled, tracing a finger along his jaw. Neither have I. At least, not with that intensity. Humans feel everything so deeply, so completely. It's intoxicating. Is that unusual for your people? We're taught from childhood to control our emotions, to maintain dignity and reserve at all times, she laughed softly. You've rather thoroughly destroyed my reserve. Good, Xylo replied with a grin. You're beautiful when you let go. Her skin flickered with pleasure at the compliment. There are many among my people who would consider this inappropriate. A Luminian warrior commander, particularly a female one, involving herself with a human. And what do you think? I think, she said, pulling him closer, that anyone who would deny this kind of connection because of species or rank is a fool. Besides, her eyes sparkled with mischief, humans have proven themselves to be far more than what they appear to be. We do have our moments, Xylo agreed, settling comfortably against her. Though I have to admit, being with someone who can literally light up a room with pleasure is a new experience. Just wait until you learn about our other abilities, Lyra teased, her glow pulsing suggestively. Their laughter was interrupted by a soft chime, the communication system requesting attention. Lyra sighed, reaching for the control panel near her bed. Commander, a voice reported, the Council requests your presence for a strategic briefing. They specifically mentioned bringing your human guest. Xylo and Lyra exchanged glances. Well, she said with a slight smile, I suppose it was only a matter of time before we had to face the official response to our cultural exchange. Are you worried? She shook her head, her Twilight Nebula hair shimmering in her own light. No. What we have is real, powerful. Even the Council will have to acknowledge that. She added with a predatory grin, besides, I'd like to see them try to separate us now. The Luminian Council chamber was designed to intimidate, its crystalline spires reaching impossibly high into the violet sky of Etheria Prime. Xylo stood beside Lyra, feeling dwarfed not just by her impressive height but by the grandeur of his surroundings. Yet, he held his head high, his warrior's pride evident in his stance. You're about to experience something few humans ever have, Lyra murmured, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder. The Concordance Ceremony. Should I be nervous? Xylo asked, adjusting the formal attire she'd provided, a blend of human and Luminian styles that somehow worked despite the size difference. Terrified, she replied with a playful smile that made her silver eyes dance. But you'll face it with typical human courage, I'm sure. The massive doors swung open silently, revealing a circular chamber filled with towering Luminian dignitaries. Their amethyst skin displayed various patterns of bioluminescence, creating an ethereal atmosphere. At the center stood a raised platform, bathed in light from 3 artificial suns, miniature replicas of the stars that warmed their homeworld. "Commander Lyra," the chief elder's voice resonated through the chamber, "you seek to bind yourself to this human warrior?" "I do," she replied, her voice clear and confident. "And you, Xylo Kane of Terra Prime, you understand what this means? The implications of joining your essence with a Luminian." Xylo stepped forward, his voice strong despite being the smallest being in the room. "I understand that I love her. Everything else is just details." A murmur rippled through the assembled Luminians, their skin flickering with various emotions. The chief elder's expression remained neutral, but there was a hint of amusement in his ancient eyes. "Humans," he mused. "Always so direct. Very well. Approach the concordance circle." As they stepped onto the platform, Lyra's hand found Xylo's. The size difference that had once seemed so insurmountable now felt natural, right? The 3 artificial suns began to rotate around them, their light creating intricate patterns on the crystal floor. "The concordance is not merely symbolic," the chief elder explained. "It will create a permanent psychic link between you, deeper than any temporary connection you may have experienced. Your emotions, your sensations, your very essence will be shared. Are you prepared for such intimacy?" Xylo looked up at Lyra, seeing the love and trust in her silver eyes. "We already share everything that matters." The ceremony began with ancient words in the Luminian tongue, words that seemed to vibrate through Xylo's very being. The artificial sun spun faster, their light becoming almost liquid as it wrapped around the couple. Lyra's natural glow intensified, her amethyst skin becoming translucent as the energy built. Through their joined hands, Xylo could feel the power building, different from their previous intimate connections, but somehow familiar. "Your cultures are as different as your sizes," the chief elder intoned. "Yet in this difference lies strength. The concordance will bridge these gaps, creating something new, something unprecedented." The light reached a crescendo and suddenly, Xylo could feel everything, Lyra's thoughts, her memories, her very essence, merging with his own. It was overwhelming, yet perfect, like finding a piece of himself he never knew was missing. Hours later, in the privacy of their newly assigned quarters in the Luminian capital, they lay together, still basking in the afterglow of their union. The room was designed to accommodate both their needs, a physical representation of their bridged cultures. "I can still feel you," Xylo said wonderingly, tracing patterns on Lyra's glowing skin. "Not just physically, but here," he tapped his temple. "The concordance is permanent," she replied, her happiness radiating through their new connection. "We will always be part of each other now." "Is it always this intense for your people?" "No," she laughed, the sound sending pleasurable ripples through their shared consciousness. "Humans feel everything so deeply. Your emotions, your passions, they've amplified the concordance beyond anything in our records." "Sorry about that," Xylo grinned. "Not sorry at all." "Never apologize for being human," Lyra said, pulling him closer. "Your intensity, your ability to feel so deeply, it's what drew me to you in the first place." Through their bond, Xylo could feel the truth of her words, along with something else, a deep pride in having chosen him, in defying convention to follow her heart. The council seemed surprised it worked so well, he noted. They underestimated humans, as so many do. Her skin flickered with amusement. "They forgot that your species' greatest strength isn't your technology or your fighting skills. It's your capacity for adaptation, for embracing the unknown." "Speaking of embracing," Xylo began, but was interrupted by a soft chime. "Urgent message from Terra Prime Command," a voice announced. They request immediate communication with Xylo Kane regarding his unique situation. They exchanged glances, both feeling each other's mix of amusement and apprehension through their bond. "I suppose it's their turn to be shocked," Lyra said, her skin pulsing with mischievous light. "They'll adapt," Xylo replied confidently. "Humans are good at that, remember?" The mission briefing chamber aboard the Luminian flagship, Starlight's Embrace, hummed with energy as Xylo and Lyra stood before the holographic display. Their recent concordance had enhanced their natural abilities in unexpected ways, making them the obvious choice for this delicate operation. The Zenith Concord has developed a new type of cloaking technology, the mission commander explained, his amethyst skin pulsing with concern. We need a team that can infiltrate their research facility and neutralize this threat before it's deployed. Xylo felt Lyra's excitement through their bond, matching his own anticipation. Their shared consciousness had turned them into something unprecedented, a perfect fusion of human adaptability and Luminian power. The facility's defenses are calibrated for either human or Luminian signatures, the commander continued, but not both simultaneously. Your unique connection makes you invisible to their systems. They never considered we could be so thoroughly joined, Lyra remarked, her silver eyes meeting Xylo's with a knowing gleam. Through their bond, he felt the warmth of her pride in their union. The mission began at dusk, their shuttle approaching the facility under cover of artificial night. Lyra's massive form moved with surprising stealth, while Xylo's smaller size allowed him to access areas she couldn't. Their mental link meant they could coordinate perfectly without speaking. "Remember the first time we met?" Xylo thought to her as they navigated a particularly tight corridor. "You carrying me from battle?" Her amusement flowed through their connection. "You were so stubborn, insisting you could still fight despite being half dead." "Look how far we've come," he replied, feeling her agreement and affection wash over him. Their infiltration went smoothly until they reached the central research chamber. The space was vast, filled with experimental equipment and patrolling guard drones. Through their bond, they formulated a plan without exchanging a word. Lyra moved first, her amethyst skin glowing just enough to draw attention. The drones converged on her position, leaving Xylo free to access the main console. Their shared consciousness allowed him to utilize her knowledge of Luminian technology, while she benefited from his human intuition. "They're adapting their scan patterns," Lyra warned through their link. "We need to move faster." Xylo's fingers flew over the console, his movements guided by their combined expertise. "Almost there, just need to there." The facility's alarms blared as their sabotage took effect. Through their bond, they coordinated their escape route, moving as one being. Despite their size difference, Lyra's powerful strides matched perfectly with Xylo's quicker pace, their movements synchronized through their shared awareness. They reached the extraction point just as security forces converged on their position. Lyra scooped Xylo up, just as she had that first day, but now the action was enhanced by their mental connection. He felt her fierce protectiveness, her joy in their physical contact, her pride in their successful mission. Back aboard the Starlight's Embrace, they retired to their specially designed quarters. The adrenaline of the mission still coursed through their shared consciousness, heightening every sensation. "I never imagined it could be like this," Lyra murmured, her skin glowing with pleasure as Xylo traced patterns on her arm. "The way we move together, think together, the perfect team." "Agreed," Xylo, feeling her happiness echoed through their bond. "Though I think we need more practice on some aspects of our coordination." Her skin flickered with anticipation as she caught his meaning through their connection. Their desires amplified each other, creating a feedback loop of sensation and emotion. Later, as they lay entwined, their shared consciousness still humming with contentment, Xylo reflected on their journey, from that first battlefield rescue to this moment. Every step had led them here, to a union that transcended physical differences and cultural boundaries. "You're thinking deep thoughts," Lyra observed, both through their bond and the expression on his face. "Just appreciating how lucky I am," he replied, sending her the full depth of his feelings through their connection. Who would have thought being wounded in battle would lead to this? Her skin pulsed with joy as she pulled him closer. "The universe works in mysterious ways, my little warrior." "Little?" he protested with mock indignation, though through their bond, he sent his amusement. "Would you prefer perfectly sized?" she teased, her silver eyes sparkling. Their shared laughter filled the room, their happiness amplified through their connection. They had found something rare and precious, a love that bridged worlds, enhanced by their differences rather than hindered by them. The crystalline gardens of Etheria Prime shimmered in the light of 3 setting suns, creating rainbow patterns that danced across Lyra's amethyst skin. Xylo watched in fascination as her natural bioluminescence seemed to respond to the changing light, creating intricate patterns he'd never seen before. "It's happening more frequently now," he observed, reaching up to trace one of the glowing patterns on her arm. Through their bond, he felt her pleasure at his touch. "The healers say it's unprecedented," Lyra replied, her silver eyes sparkling with excitement. "Our concordance is evolving, growing stronger. My body is adapting to match the intensity of your human emotions. Their shared consciousness hummed with mutual wonder as they explored these new developments. Since their successful mission, their connection had deepened beyond anything either species had documented. Xylo could now sense Lyra's presence even across vast distances, and her natural Lemnian abilities had begun manifesting in unique ways when they were together. "Watch this," she whispered, extending her hand. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin shifted, and suddenly, the light seemed to extend beyond her body, creating a bridge between them. When Xylo touched it, he felt an unprecedented surge of sensation. "That's incredible," he gasped, feeling their shared consciousness expand. "How are you doing that?" "I'm not entirely sure," she admitted, her Twilight Nebula hair shimmering with its own inner light. "It's as if your human capacity for adaptation is somehow enhancing my natural abilities." The healers are fascinated. Through their bond, Xylo sensed her deeper thoughts, her dreams of their future together, her hopes for what their unique union might mean for both their species. The images flowed between them, a home that would accommodate both their needs, a life that would blend their cultures in ways never before imagined. "I want to show you something," Lyra said suddenly, standing to her full height and offering him her hand. Even after all this time, the size difference between them still filled him with a sense of wonder. She led him through the gardens to a secluded area he'd never seen before. A structure stood there, its architecture unlike anything in the main city. It seemed to be designed with both their proportions in mind, seamlessly blending human and Lemnian aesthetics. "I've been working with the architects," she explained, her skin pulsing with a nervous excitement that flowed through their bond. "This would be ours. If you want it. A place where we can truly build our life together." Xylo walked through the entrance, marveling at how perfectly everything was scaled. Spaces designed for Lyra's height flowed naturally into areas sized for him, creating an environment that celebrated their differences rather than trying to compromise them. "It's perfect," he breathed, feeling her joy at his response echo through their connection. "But what about your duties? My responsibilities?" "That's the other surprise," she said, her silver eyes twinkling. "The Council has approved our request for joint command of the new Human-Lemnian Integration Force. We'll be based here, training others in the techniques we've developed together." The implications washed over him through their bond. They would be pioneers, helping others explore the potential of human-Lemnian partnerships, not just in combat or diplomacy, but in all aspects of life. "Speaking of integration," Xylo said with a grin, pulling her down for a kiss that sent sparks of shared pleasure through their connection. Her skin brightened in response, the new patterns of light swirling around them both, their passions ignited through their bond, each feeling the other's desire amplified and reflected back. The light from Lyra's skin enveloped them both, creating a private universe where size and species ceased to matter. Later, as they lay together in their new home, their shared consciousness still singing with contentment, Lyra traced patterns on Xylo's chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Being wounded that day? Being carried away by a giant alien woman?" Xylo captured her hand, sending her the full force of his feelings through their bond. "Best thing that ever happened to me. Though I have to admit, I never expected to find love on the battlefield." "Humans," she laughed, her skin pulsing with affection. "Always finding joy in the most unexpected places." Through their connection he felt her deeper meaning, how his capacity for human adaptation and emotion had changed her, and had changed society's understanding of what was possible. "We have a saying on Terra Prime," Xylo said, running his fingers through her glowing hair. "Everything happens for a reason." "Indeed it does, my little warrior," she replied, her silver eyes soft with love. "Indeed it does." The morning light of Etheria Prime's 3 suns filtered through the crystalline walls of their home, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across Xylo and Lyra's shared living space. Their dwelling had become a testament to their unique union, a perfect blend of human comfort and Lemnian grandeur. Xylo stood at the observation window, watching the sunrise while sipping from a cup of Terra Prime imported coffee. Through their bond, he felt Lyra's consciousness stirring before she physically entered the room. Her presence in his mind had become as natural as breathing, a constant warmth that made him feel complete. "You're up early," she observed, her amethyst skin shimmering with morning luminescence as she approached. Her casual attire, a flowing robe designed to accommodate her towering frame, caught the light in ways that made Xylo's breath catch. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted, sending her images through their bond of the dreams that had kept him awake, visions of their future together, possibilities that seemed endless. "Show me," she whispered, kneeling beside him so they were closer to eye level. Her silver eyes held that unique mixture of warrior strength and tender affection that had first drawn him to her. Xylo placed his hand against her cheek, their size difference long since ceased to matter. Through their connection, he shared everything, his hopes, his desires, his complete acceptance of their unconventional life together. "Your emotions are so vibrant," Lyra marveled, her skin pulsing with responsive patterns of light. "Even after all this time, the intensity of human feelings still amazes me." "Says the woman who literally glows with pleasure," Xylo teased, tracing one of the luminescent patterns on her arm. Through their bond, he felt her delight at his touch, amplified by their shared consciousness. "A side effect of loving you," she replied, her twilight nebula hair cascading around them as she leaned closer. "The healers are still studying how our bond has affected my bioluminescence. They say it's responding to your human passion, creating new patterns they've never seen before." Their kiss was gentle at first, but quickly deepened as their shared emotions created a feedback loop of sensation. Lyra's natural glow intensified, surrounding them both in a cocoon of light that seemed to pulse in time with their heartbeats. Later, as they lay together in their specially designed sleeping chamber, Xylo marveled at how far they'd come from that first battlefield encounter. "Remember when you used to have to carry me everywhere?" "Used to." Lyra laughed, demonstrating her point by easily lifting him into her arms. "I still carry you quite often, my little warrior." "Only because you enjoy it," he retorted, feeling her agreement through their bond. "Though I have to admit, being cradled by a beautiful giant alien woman has its perks." Her skin flickered with pleasure at the compliment. "And what perks might those be?" Instead of answering with words, Xylo sent her his feelings through their connection, his complete trust in her strength, his admiration of her grace, his joy in their physical and emotional intimacy. The feedback loop of sensation between them intensified as she responded with her own emotions. "The council was right about one thing," Lyra murmured as their shared consciousness hummed with contentment. "Human adaptability is remarkable. No other species could have formed a bond this deep with a Luminian." "Maybe they just needed the right motivation," Xylo suggested, running his fingers through her glowing hair. "Getting rescued by a gorgeous warrior tends to inspire one to adapt quickly." Their shared laughter filled the room, their joy amplified through their connection. Through their bond, Xylo could feel Lyra's deeper thoughts, her pride in their unique relationship, her excitement about their future together, her constant amazement at the depth of human emotion. "The healers want to study our bond again," she said after a moment. "They're particularly interested in how your human characteristics are influencing my natural abilities." "Let me guess, more tests?" "They're fascinated by how our physical intimacy enhances the connection," she replied, her skin pulsing with mischievous light. "Though I've assured them that aspect of our relationship requires no scientific oversight." Xylo grinned, sending her a wave of suggestive thoughts through their bond. "I should hope not. Some things should remain private, even in the name of science." Their shared consciousness filled with warmth and humor as they settled into their morning routine. Their home had become a sanctuary, where their differences were celebrated rather than merely accommodated. Every detail, from the dual-scale furniture to the environmental controls that maintained a comfortable temperature for both species, reflected their successful integration. "What shall we do today?" Lyra asked, though through their bond, she could already sense his answer. "Stay here," Xylo replied, pulling her close. "Just us. Just this." Through their connection, he shared his complete contentment with their intimate world, their perfect union of human passion and Luminian grace. Her skin brightened with pleasure as she enveloped him in her embrace. "My precious little warrior," she murmured, her silver eyes soft with love. "Always knowing exactly what I need." A year had passed since that fateful day on the battlefield, when a wounded human warrior found himself in the arms of a towering Luminian woman. Now, standing before the assembled council and Terra Prime representatives, Xylo and Lyra had become living proof of what their species could achieve together. The grand chamber of the Luminian-Human Alliance sparkled with the combined light of Terra Prime's sun and Etheria Prime's triple stars, projected through quantum mirrors. Lyra's amethyst skin glowed with pride as she stood beside Xylo, their size difference now a symbol of their unique bond rather than an obstacle. "The success of your union has exceeded all expectations," the chief elder announced, his ancient eyes twinkling. "Your bond has shown us possibilities we never imagined." Through their shared consciousness, Xylo felt Lyra's joy mingle with his own. Their connection had grown so profound that her bioluminescence now responded to his emotions as much as her own, creating stunning displays that reflected their combined essence. "We've learned so much," Lyra addressed the assembly, her silver eyes bright with emotion. "Human passion, combined with Luminian abilities, has created something entirely new. Something beautiful." Xylo squeezed her hand, sending waves of love through their bond. Her skin pulsed in response, creating patterns that told their story, from battlefield rescue to eternal partnership. Later, in the privacy of their home, they celebrated their journey in their own intimate way. Their shared consciousness hummed with contentment as they held each other, their physical differences long since transformed from challenge to blessing. "Who would have thought," Xylo mused, watching the play of light across Lyra's amethyst skin, "that being wounded in battle would lead to all this?" "I knew the moment I held you," she replied, cradling him close as she had that first day. "Humans may be small, but your capacity for love is greater than any giant." Their laughter echoed through their bond, a perfect harmony of human warmth and Luminian grace. They had found something rare and precious, a love that transcended physical form, a connection that bridged worlds. In the light of 3 setting suns, their silhouettes merged, the towering warrior woman and her smaller human mate, their hearts beating as one beneath the eternal stars.